Right, exactly. So let's see what the Gemara says. We're on Chaf Beis Amud Aleph 21a1. My Mishnah says two halachot. One, it says that sukkah des meduvlelet, which the Gemara is going to explain what that means, and its shade is more than its sun, it's kosher. Now, obviously, the Gemara is going to have to discuss what do you mean. Of course, a shade is more than its sun. In order for sukkah to be kosher, it has to have more shade than sun. So, what is this halacha teaching us? And then the Mishnah says, if you have a sukkah that's thick, it's schach that's thick like a house, that means there's a lot of schach. Even though you cannot see the stars, the Mishnah stated that the sukkah is what? Is kosher.
But wasn't it one of the sukkah need to be kosher so you can see the sky, you can see the stars?
That's one of the, ideally, that's how you're supposed to make it. But the Mishnah says if you didn't do it that way, it's still kosher. Now you have to also, you should be aware the fact that you want to see the stars, but you still don't want to have, number one, too much space between the schach. You have to be careful also, right? You don't want to have, we spoke about, you don't want to have space going from one end of the sukkah, empty space to the other end of the sukkah. You got to be careful. You know, you want a nice amount of schach, but you don't. But it sounds like you shouldn't overdo it in a certain sense that it resembles a house. Now, my muduvlelet. So what does mean muduvlelet? Amarav sukkah aniyah. It means the sukkah that's poor, like that. The sukkah that's poor. That means it doesn't have so much schach. It's very light on its schach. Rashi says there's a lot of spaces, but you don't have three tvachim. You don't have three tvachim together, like 9 to 12 inches of empty space going throughout the sukkah. But it's a weak type of sukkah when it comes to schach, and yet. And we'll see what the chidush is in a minute. Shmuel says that the schach is not laying flat properly. It means one piece of schach goes up, one piece of schach goes down. The spaces between the schach and the fact that one is higher and one is lower. You can have two pieces of schach right next to each other, but if one is higher than lower, then it creates a space between. Imagine, Simon, here's a piece of bamboo stick here, but there's other bamboo stick is raised going like this. And the way they made it is let's say it's uneven how the ceiling is, and therefore it goes up on a slant, and there's spaces that are running in between. So there's a stick going up and there's a stick going down, there's bamboo going this way, there's bamboo going the other way. And it's also kosher. The Gemara was going to explain what this means. Rav Tanichada, Shmuel Tanitarti. Rav has the Mishnah as one case. The Mishnah has 2 points to the one case. Shmuel Tanitarti. Shmuel says there's 2 different cases going on in the Mishnah. Rav Tanichada. Rav learns one case. Sukkah muduvlelet. The Mishnah is not telling us 2 different laws, because if you look at the language of the Mishnah says sukkah muduvlelet, vishel silta meruba mechamata. Right? It says the sukkah that's muduvlelet, and the shade is more than the sun. Is it 2 different situations, 2 different cases, or the second statement is elaborating on some other detail of the case? So Rav says it's all one case. Sukkah muduvlelet, a sukkah that's poor, my muduvlelet, mududelet. It's missing schach. But if there's more shade than sun coming into the sukkah, you're good. Now, what's the chidush? Of course, if you have a sukkah that even if it's light on the schach, but at the end of the day you have more shade than sun, we found that only it's kosher. The chidush is maybe, like the Ritva says, maybe something's going to happen that some schach will fall off, and you won't realize some schach fell off, or a wind might come and take away a little bit of schach, and you know what? And then you won't have more shade than sun. So when you're playing very close to the fire, and you're very close to the edge of the train tracks, it might fall. So here also, the fact that there's just a minimum, pretty much a minimum amount of schach. So should you be concerned that maybe you will lose that minimum amount of schach and you won't be aware of it, you wouldn't know, and then you'd be sitting in a sukkah without not kosher sukkah. So the chidush is, the novelty is, the Mishnah is telling us that we're not concerned that that's going to happen. You're going to be on top of your game. You know the sukkah that you have is light on schach, and you're going to be constantly focused and seeing if there's enough shade, more shade than sun. And if that happens, that the wind comes or something comes that you lose some schach, you're going to be on top of the situation. You're going to be aware of it. You can see if there's more shade than sun or not. So that's the first opinion of Rav. That's the chidush. It's one case. There's a sukkah that doesn't have so much schach. It's light on the schach. They were in an area that was hard to get schach, and now they made the sukkah. As long as there's more shade than sun, they don't have to be concerned that maybe you're going to lose some more schach, and you're not going to be aware of it. Shmuel Tani Tati. Shmuel has a greater chidush. Shmuel, listen to Shmuel's chidush. Ma'im duvlelet mevubelet. Mevubelet means it's like mixed up. It's not straight. One schach is going this way, like bilbil. Like one schach is going this way. Like it says by Hashem by Migdal Bavel. Hashem confused them, but right? Or Balal, Belula, Beshemen, mixed up. So what does the Gemara say? V'tarti ketani. He says, "Hani tani tarti." My miduvlelet muvubelet. Midudelet is not from the word dal, it's from the word balal. V'tarti ketani. And the Mishnah is telling us two cases. Sukkah muvubelet kashera. The sukkah that's muvubelet, it's kosher. Case one. And case two is v'silta meruv mechamata. Case two is the case that Rav says, that it's light on the schach. Case two is that if it's light on the schach, we say it's kosher. Meaning to say, Shmuel has two cases in the Mishnah. Case two is exactly what Rav said. If it's light on the schach, when the Mishnah says it's more shade than sun, you know what that means? It's light. What's it more shade than sun? It's kosher. It's light on the schach, and still it's kosher. But what's case one? Meduvlelet means that even if you have separations of schach, separations between this piece of schach and this piece of schach, we still say it's kosher, provided that if this piece of schach would be flat next to it, it would provide enough shade. We look at as if there's a new chidush. We look at schach that's on top of a sukkah, that's not straight, that's on an angle, that's separated from the other piece of schach. We look at it as if it's next to it, and that's the concept called chavut rami. We look at the schach as if it was like we have such a halacha. Sometimes you see lavud, something which is in 3 tfachim. It's like it's attached. We find such a concept, or we find good achis. We have a concept. Remember, we learned about a ledge of a roof that we look at as if it comes down. So too, we have this concept. We look at the schach as if it goes down. So that's what he says. And then Abaye says, the following. Lo shanu, Abaye says, that which is kosher, ela she'ein bein zeh lezeh shlosha tvachim. If between this piece of schach and the next that's on the angle, that it's not on the same level, as long as that's only true, that we could look at it as if it's lower down and will create more shade, as long as there's no 3 tvachim between each piece of schach. Between here and here, there's not 9 to 12 inches. Aval yesh beinehem, but if there's yesh bein zeh lezeh shlosha tvachim, but if there's 3 tvachim between one and the other, so then we say pesula. Then we don't look at it as if this is lower down. Meaning this concept that we say, I have a piece of schach here and a piece of schach here, and it doesn't provide more. And now if you look at the sukkah, there's more sun than shade. But we're going to look at it as if it's down here. And now if it would have been down straight down, it would fill the gap. It would be more shade than sun. That's only if they're like if these are within 9 to 12 inches of the other one. So then we could say it's like connected, and we can look at it like it's lower down. But if it's not within 3 tvachim, we will not look at it as if it's lower down. It comes Rava, Amar Rava. Rava says, even if there is 3 tvachim, even if there is again, so the first halacha is that if you have a space between this one and this one, if it's within 3 tvachim, one piece of schach to the other, we look at it as if it's within 3 tvachim, they're like connected. They're like connected, so we look at it as if it filled the gap. And now, if it would have been lower down, it's more shade than sun. So then it's a kosher sukkah. 9 inches. 9 inches. Right. So, but right. So we're going to say now, if there's 9 to 12 inches between, he says we don't look at it like they're connected, and therefore it will not. We won't look at the piece of schach as if it's lower down, because if you look at it as if it's lower down, and then what would be if it would be lower down? If there would be more shade than sun, if it will be lower, then it's kosher. If you consider this piece of schach as if it's connected to the other one, and as if it's adjacent next to the other one, and if that's the case, if it will be next to the other one, will provide more shade than sun, it's kosher. But if there's a 3 tvachim, 9 12 inch separation, we don't look at this as if this is connected to this. And therefore, it will not fill the gap. And therefore, if there's more sun than shade, it's not kosher. Now comes Rava, and Rava has the following chiddush. Afilu yesh bein zeh lezeh. Even if between this piece of schach and that piece of schach, afilu yesh bein zeh lezeh shlosha tvachim. Even if there is 3 tvachim, but lo amaran ela she'ein begago tefach. When this piece of schach, that's 3 tvachim, does not have a width of a tefach. But if this piece of schach, like Simon, this piece of schach is not a simple little small bamboo, it's a wide piece. So then we're going to say a wide piece, then we'll say the rule of chavit rami. Then we'll come on to the rule of, see, before, and I mentioned chavit rami, that it fills the gap, like the wall goes down. The Gemara is now the Gemara is introducing that. Until now, the Gemara did not have to come on to that. The Gemara just came on to the idea that if you're within 3 tvachim, you're like connected, and you're like connected, so we look at it like you're right next to it. Now they're saying if this schach is wide, a tefach or more, so even if it's more than 3 tvachim, we'll look at it as it goes down, as if chavit rami, like just like you say, where the wall goes down. We say this principle of chavut rami, that we say, we look at it, we say that this piece of schach comes down and fills the gap. We say chavut rami means you lower it and you place it as if it's lower down. So that's until now, what we had before, and when you have a ledge of something, so the edge of something could go down, and now we're saying that the actual thing itself. Before we were talking about you have let's say some sort of ledge, and we say this part, we look at this as if it goes down. So now we're saying we're looking at the actual schach that's within, that even if it's not within the actual schach, if it's wide, the schach itself goes straight down. It's not coming down this way. It's not coming down vertically. It's coming down horizontally. That's what we're saying now. So the Gemara now says, so Rava says, where do I know this novelty that that if it has a tefach, we say, we look at it as if it goes down. When it doesn't have a tefach, we don't say chavet rami. We don't say this halacha of that it fills that. It's not. We learned in the Mishnah. Korot habayit v'haliyah. You have beams of the house and beams of the upper floor. So these beams are holding up the ceiling, and you have beams on the bottom, and you have beams on the top. If you look at the picture on 22A2, right? 22A2 on the bottom. You have 19. You see the picture of 19, Simon?
Yeah.
You see what it says? The Mishnah deals with it's a two-story house, 2 floors. You have the bottom floor, whose 2 ceilings are framed with beams. So you have the beams, but they did not fill in. The roof is not complete. See all the spaces in the roof, spaces between the ceiling of the first floor and the ceiling of the second floor has right. So you have the boards and you have the beams that are supporting the boards, correct? So you have 2 sets of beams supporting the boards. Looks like 2 beams on each side, correct? What do you see, Mr. And now what's the case? Now we know we have a halacha that for something to be an ohel, we have a concept. You have something that's a tefach wide, that could serve as a tent. So if you have, let's say there's something a tefach wide, and there's a piece of a dead body, a certain part of a dead body right over here. So since there's a tent above it, so then anything that's underneath that tent would become contaminated. If you have a utensil above, not right, because this serves as a separation for what's above. So if there's the dead piece of the bone of a certain body over here, if there's a utensil to its left, since it's under the same roof, that whole thing, that utensil will become contaminated. So now we have over here, they don't have any plaster on these beams, and the beams are, it's still the floor hasn't been filled in, the roof hasn't been filled in. And these beams from floor number 1, the roofing of floor number 1, the beams of floor number 1, and the roofing of floor number 2 are exactly parallel, right. The beams are one on top of the other. Now the picture. So the pictures here don't look like they're exactly on top of each other. That they're illustrated. But now tumma tachat achad mehem. So if there's tumma, if there's a mate, a dead body underneath one of them, so tachteha tameh. So whatever's underneath that beam, good morning, everything underneath that beam will become, any utensils will become contaminated because it's under the same roof. But tachteim tameh. Now, beina tachtona le'elyona, if there's a mate between the lower beam and the
there's no separation
and the upper beam, so then we say if they're directly over each other, so we also say beineihem tameh, only underneath. Because if let's say this is like this, and exactly on top of each other, so that the contamination will go only direct. If let's say it's the top of floor number 1, the roofing of the first floor, there's a contamination between the roofing of the first floor and the roofing of the second floor. So anything, so if you would go above between the contamination and the directly on top of the contamination, and so this whole thing is a roofing. So anything.
It's not a solid roofing. So how is it protected from being
So here we're saying that if they're if the beams are if they're directly on top of each other, so let's say beam one and beam number two, this floor and this floor, the beams from the first floor to the second floor, one are directly on top of each other. So then between that means this and this is a roof. There's a going across. We'll explain more tomorrow about this.
There's a space in between them, so what,
No, so we're talking. No, we're talking now that the beams, the case we're talking about the beams are directly on top. There's no space between them. We'll see tomorrow more about that.
Okay.
Very good, Simon.